Welcome to the T-Bird Zone, streamed every week on SUTBirds.com and SUUnews.com. You can also catch the show on YouTube. And we're in studio this week with head football coach Ed Lamb. We're going to recap the game against UC Davis that the football team played a couple of weeks ago. And, Coach, that was just a huge rushing game for the Thunderbirds, the most rushing yards we've had in a single game up to this point this season. 251 total yards on the ground. And all three running backs that had time in the backfield, great numbers. Henna Brown had 82 yards. Austin Minifee 131 yards with one run of 70 plus, picking up most of those on that one run. And then even Mike Tagliaferri in limited action at the end of the game, he was averaging close to 9 yards per carry, 8.8. Talk about the running game and how that led to the victory there that couple of weeks ago.
Well, the running game always starts with an emphasis. We going into the UC Davis game, we'd run some statistics, and I think we were aware of this most of the season, but when we rushed for 100 yards, we were 4-0, and when we didn't do that, we were 0-4. And when we outrushed our opponent, we were having great success. So when we were playing well on offense, running the ball and stopping the run, we were having great success, and when we didn't do that, we were losing all of our games. So we committed to make sure that we got the running game taken care of against UC Davis. So it started with an emphasis. Our offensive line has to block well for guys to run well. You mentioned the names, and that's as running backs, they get their names mentioned, but our offensive line played a tremendous game. Our quarterback put us in the right plays to run the ball effectively, and the running backs ran very, very hard.
You talked about how offensive line blocking, the quarterback putting them in the right position to rush the ball. Was that a point of emphasis going into that week? And it was just stress, rush, or did it just come as a byproduct of what UC Davis was giving us in that game?
I think it's always there's the recipe for having a good rushing game. There's always multiple factors, multiple ingredients, I guess. Keep the analogy going. We wanted to run the ball. We insisted on running the ball, and yet we still threw the ball a lot, maybe in comparison with how some teams throw. We opened up the game with a throw. I think we had three tosses on our first drive, on our first scoring drive. So we want to keep a balanced attack, but for us, that means more rushing and more effective rushing than we have been doing.
Talked about the few throws. The first catch of the game is by Abel Iono, who rumbles, I think, 15 yards, something like that. Really opened up the game well. In fact, Abel Iono, the leading receiver in that game, he had 8 catches for 66 yards. We've had discussion where it's been a point of emphasis to have Brad step up in the pocket. Is Abel leading the team in receptions that game? Is that a byproduct of Brad stepping up in the pocket and being able to see the middle of the field?
It sure is, and the tight end sometimes pops open a little later than other guys. And we simplify it, and you and I have talked about Brad stepping up in the pocket, but really what Brad has done a great job of is taking that small piece of coaching, and now he's stepping up obliquely in the pocket as he should. It's not always straight ahead down the field looking for routes over the middle. It's reading the defense to the appropriate side of his pre-snap read, and then moving up and staying with the play as long as possible before he takes off running or finds a check down.
You talk about ingredients for success each game of excelling in the rushing game, limiting turnovers and capitalizing on opponent turnovers. UC Davis had 4 fumbles in the game. Southern Utah defense recovered 3 of those. How big were those as far as stalling the UC Davis offense and turning those into points?
Turnovers are always a major factor in a game, so it was huge for us. We didn't turn the ball over on offense, which makes it even bigger. It's one thing to take away it 3 times, but then to lose it 3 times, and then it's a stalemate as far as turnovers. We had an advantage in the takeaway turnover department, and it was a big advantage. And to my recollection, I think all 3 of our fumble recoveries happened after a fairly significant gain by UC Davis, maybe 10 to 15-yard gain. So it was great for stealing momentum, stealing the possession of the football, and I think our offense capitalized on at least 2 of those turnovers as well.
The final score of that game, 34-3, probably one of the most lopsided victories this year. But last weekend during the bye week, UC Davis beats Cal Poly in Davis. There's some people in the community who are thinking, are you surprised by Davis beating Poly, where we had gone to Cal Poly and lost that game? But like you had mentioned, Davis they're a quality team.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon that I find kind of specific to college players and college fans, where we tend to think that because we beat Davis 34-3 that we're better than them. If you follow the NFL like a lot of guys do, that it's really no surprise. We play a team 2, maybe 3 times a year with playoffs, and it's no surprise to go 1-1 against a team. In fact, a lot of teams would say, hey, we need to split with this team as part of our goal for the season. So it's not that you're better than a team. We're no necessarily better than Davis, but we were better on that day. Our guys played tremendous. They earned a victory, and not a surprise to me at all that Davis could beat Cal Poly. Any team in our league can beat any other team in our league on any day.
The last thing I wanted to mention about that game is, again, rushing yards, 251 total on the game, and only 238 yards passing. Still solid numbers, but again, the first time that the rushing yards have outgained the passing yards. And what was probably the biggest key? Was it the rushing game in that game that led to the victory?
I think there are several factors. Our defense played incredibly well, stopped the run. Our offense ran the ball so efficiently, it opened up the passing game. We threw the ball efficiently. We ran the ball efficiently. We also were able to get in and out of our short yardage situations. We had an early 3rd and 2 that we converted, not just for a first down, but we were able to run the ball for, I think, 7 or 8 yards, set up a score, maybe even 17 yards on the 3rd and 2 early in the game. And then late in the game, when we were in a situation where we wanted to control the clock, as you said, Mike Tagliaferri comes in, and we were able to eat up chunks of yardage and eat up clock and keep UC Davis off the field, and really that happened all game. UC Davis had very, very few offensive plays.
Coach, thanks as always for joining us here in the T-Bird Zone, and join us for our next segment when we'll be previewing the game against the University of Northern Iowa coming up this weekend.